The subcommittee will come to order to receive testimony on the President's budget request for the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps for fiscal year 26. I'll begin by welcoming the Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, Acting Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral James Kirby, Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Eric Smith. We're obviously grateful to each of you for your willingness to lead at a pivotal moment for the department, and to the sailors, Marines, and civilian personnel who advance Navy and Marine Corps missions and keep America safe every day. I'm particularly grateful to the sailors who have stood watch in the Gulf and the Red Sea over the last 20 months, helping to defend Israel, U.S. interests, and freedom of navigation against Iran-backed terrorists. And to the crews deployed there right now who launched Tomahawk cruise missiles as part of the joint operation to strike what I hope is a fatal blow to Iran's nuclear aspirations. I also want to recognize the Marine Corps, whose fallen comrades were among the earliest victims of Iran's decades-long war against the United States and Israel, those taken hostage with U.S. Embassy personnel in Tehran, and the hundreds killed in Beirut back in 1983 before any of us up here were in Washington. Generations of service members carrying the scars of Iran-backed attacks on American personnel in the region over the decades. Their sacrifices remind us that death to America is more than just rhetoric. For too long, Tehran itself faced negligible costs for its actions of their terrorist proxies. Thanks to Israel's initiative in turning the tables and the President's decision to back them up, the Islamic Republic is finally paying a steep price. This weekend's events are yet a further reminder of the challenges facing the joint force today. And my colleagues and I hope to understand the extent to which you think the President's budget request would provide the resources necessary to meet, deter, and defeat them. Each of the services is grappling in its own way with the reality of renewed major power competition and with the increasing alignment of America's adversaries. As you know, major transformations test assumptions and service culture. They test the capacity of the industrial base. And importantly, they hinge on transparent working relations with Congress and on robust and consistent full-year investments in major priorities. I'll offer just a few observations in this vein. First, the good. Secretary Phelan, I've appreciated your recognition of Congress' role in equipping the Navy and Marine Corps and the collaborative approach you've taken with the subcommittee. Your willingness to communicate transparently will continue to benefit our shared mission of restoring the Navy's preeminence. I also appreciate your persistent engagement with the maritime industrial base. Your travels to see our shipbuilding challenges across the country firsthand have not gone unnoticed. We will not solve this problem without the private sector. Likewise, General Smith, the Marine Corps spent years developing a clear rationale for major transformation, made tough and deliberate choices, and engaged Congress to effectively along the way. Marine Corps Force Design 2030 continues to offer other services valuable lessons as they pursue transformations of their own. Look forward to hearing how the Marine Corps is on transformation to meet future threats. How's it going? The good, the bad, and the ugly. But to be quite frank, the decisions this administration has made on resourcing the Department of Defense, a full-year CR that failed to address rising costs of operations and maintenance and major modernization requirements, a one-time reconciliation investment that risks new cliffs for sustainment, and a base request for this fiscal year of fiscal 26 even lower than the previous administration's 25 request. All of that makes your jobs more difficult. At the most basic level, a fiscal 26 base defense top line that doesn't keep pace with inflation, let alone with the pacing threat of the PRC, does not show that we're serious about the tasks that are before us. Neither does pretending that one-time injections of funding are a substitute for consistent appropriations. For example, none of you needs me to point out the breadth of bipartisan support for accelerating procurement of Virginia-class submarines. If the administration shares our interest in meaningfully expanding shipbuilding capacity, why are investments like this one not built into the basic budget request? Why are we allocating funds under extraordinary parliamentary authorities for capabilities that would otherwise have been funded in an annual appropriation? Will the Navy even be able to complete 2 Virginia-class subs with reconciliation money before the funding actually expires? Leaving aside the color of money, we also want to hear your assessment of the impediments to delivering essential capabilities like submarines, destroyers, and amphibious vessels at the speed of relevance. This subcommittee has been consistently generous, but despite pouring billions more dollars into the effort, the timeline for producing a Virginia-class sub continues to stretch longer. Of course, we don't just need to build platforms faster. We need to figure out how to make munitions more efficient, especially the special missile defense interceptors and long-range fires on which current operations are relying very heavily. How has the Navy handled the high operational tempo of the Red Sea? How does the fiscal 26 request reflect the urgent need to deepen our magazines in a more cost-efficient manner? Finally, I'm curious about the lessons your services are taking from the current conflicts. What's the Navy learned from the demands of long deployments and the costs of air wing accidents on USS Truman? What lessons is the service taking from Ukraine's decimation of Russia's Black Sea fleet? How is the Navy approaching force protection itself? Is it hardening major assets both in port and at sea? Does it have sufficient resources to do both? What is the Marine Corps learning from Russia's ground war in Ukraine? How does information sharing at the cutting edge of modern warfare inform the service's ongoing transformation effort? To what extent is success in the face of unique Indo-Pacific circumstances dependent on things outside of your control, like logistics and transportation provided by other services or commands? We'll be curious for each of your observations. I would suggest that any honest accounting of the task at hand will have to reckon with the deficiencies of the defense top line. If our objective is to build a force capable of projecting power globally, to deter, fight, and prevail against Chinese aggression, possibly while engaged in a conflict in some other theater, I don't see how this budget request gets us there. So we'll look forward to your testimony in just a moment. Our colleague, Senator Schatz, is filling in for the ranking member, Senator Coons. With that, let me turn it over to Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. We're holding this hearing at a pivotal moment given the recent developments in the Middle East. President Trump's decision to strike Iran was impetuous. He conducted strikes without seeking congressional authorization, and it endangered service members stationed throughout the region. Iran's barrage of missile attacks today on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar demonstrated that. The announcement of a ceasefire is good news, but now we need an actual ceasefire, and it is on all parties to arrive at that conclusion. This unnecessary 12-day conflict resulted in 24 Israelis dead, and 600 Iranians dead and 2,500 wounded. The United States and Iran must get back to the negotiating table. On the Navy's budget request, the fiscal year 2026 base budget request for the Navy and Marine Corps is $242.2 billion, $8 billion below the fiscal year 2025 CR. Failing to address the current shortfalls caused by the CR means that the Navy will not be able to successfully deter the threats posed by China. Reconciliation is not a responsible way to do spending. As the chairman said, using extraordinary parliamentary authorities does not sustain the Department of Defense. The department's ability to take care of our service members should not be contingent on whether Congress passes an unrelated package of tax cuts and health care cuts. There are several areas in this request which I believe need further discussion. The first is shipbuilding. Secretary Phelan, I continue to be concerned that the Navy and industry struggle to build a variety of key platforms, including the Columbia-class and Virginia-class submarines. Hawaii uniquely understands the importance of the health and maintenance of the fleet. Time and again, Congress has been asked to cover cost growth or to support budget gimmicks that result in the government sometimes paying the same bill twice. Worse, this budget doesn't even request the bare minimum. The Navy requests only one Virginia-class submarine, hoping reconciliation will provide a second one. But even with reconciliation, the Navy is still about $2 billion short of what it needs. Secretary Phelan, I'd like to hear your plan to build up our maritime industrial base. Next, on maintenance, continued delays in ship maintenance combined with extended deployments are placing an unsustainable burden on both our fleet and our people. Backlogs accumulate risk across the force. The committee needs to hear the Navy's plan to ensure it is retaining experienced shipyard workers and expanding the workforce to grow capacity and prepare for the future. Lastly, I want to hear about the Navy and Marine Corps' evolving posture in the Middle East and the Indo-Pacific. The Navy and the Marine Corps have an important role in protecting our service members in the Middle East, given the heightened threats. But we also have to maintain a robust presence in the Indo-Pacific, not only to deter conflict there, but also to reassure our allies and our partners of America's commitment to the region. I'd like to hear about the cost of sustaining such a presence and whether our current resources are sufficient to meet the demands. I want to thank you all for your service to the country, and I look forward to the hearing.
All right, we're anxious to hear from you all, beginning with you, Mr. Secretary, and then General Smith, and then Admiral Kilby.
Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, Chairman McConnell, Senator Schatz, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today alongside General Smith and Admiral Kilby. I'm grateful to President Trump for the trust he's placed in me to lead this department and serve as the 79th Secretary of the Navy. I'm also grateful to the Senate for my confirmation and to this committee for your continued support of our Navy Marine Corps team. Senators, my North Star as Secretary is readiness. Before a dollar is spent on any capability, an exquisite platform, or infrastructure, I will always ask the following question: what is the impact to our readiness And does it increase or does it add to it? If the answer is no, we will not spend that dollar. As stated to this committee before, I'm focused on 3 priority areas. First, strengthening shipbuilding and the maritime industrial base. Second, fostering an adaptive, accountable, and innovative warfighter culture. Third, improving the health, welfare, and training of our people, our sailors, Marines, and their families. Since my confirmation 3 months ago, I've been on a listening and learning tour. I've traveled across the country and visited some of our allies overseas. I've visited our public, private, and overseas shipyards, as well as our installations. And I've met with many of our sailors, Marines, and shipyard workers. What I've learned is this: we are still the dominant naval power, but our adversaries are closing the gap at a concerning and accelerating rate. We need to make important cultural and strategic changes in order to maintain our competitive advantage. And we need to address a culture, one riddled with bureaucratic decision-making, risk aversion, and gold-plated requirements. There is no doubt we are operating in a world that is more hostile and unpredictable. As evidenced by recent conflict, warfare as we know it is changing dramatically. China is our primary competitor, both economically and militarily. With their naval fleet nearing 400 ships, China's goal is not the defense of its homeland only. It is the forward projection of power and influence. In the Indo-Pacific, our Navy Marine Corps team is deepening cooperation with our allies and partners to strengthen deterrence and keep open our sea lines of communication. At home, they are supporting Homeland Defense through Task Force SAPR, providing surveillance, logistics, and manpower at the southern border. And on Saturday, a Navy Ohio-class guided missile submarine performed exceptionally, causing significant damage to Iran's nuclear capacity and demonstrating the unmatched coordination, integration, and capability of our nation's military. The Department of the Navy's global presence sends a clear message to the world. The United States Navy and Marine Corps are prepared and ready to fight and win anytime, anywhere, and against any adversary. However, our naval superiority is under threat. For too long, we've allowed our shipbuilding industry to erode, hollowing out the very capacity we need to maintain credible naval deterrence. That must change. Rebuilding our maritime industrial base is not just a matter of economic policy, it is a national security imperative. President Trump's executive order on restoring America's maritime dominance highlights that urgency and puts us on the right path. I've been to 10 shipyards, 7 here in the United States and 3 overseas, and I've spoken directly with shipyard leaders and the hardworking tradesmen essential to our maritime operations. I now have a clear picture of our challenges and am developing a plan to fix what's broken. To do this, we need to act with urgency and behave more like we are on a wartime-like footing. This will require budget flexibility. Right now, we are constrained by programmatic funding, which hinders our ability to optimally allocate capital across platforms like ships, munitions, and unmanned systems. Our outdated and limited discretionary method of funding cannot keep pace with the rapidly changing technological environment. This will also take a whole-of-government approach with the proper oversight and accountability to rebuild our capacity and expertise. We are developing a deliberate, actionable plan to restore our industrial base, but we cannot do it alone. Congress, private industry, and the Department of the Navy must work collaboratively if we are serious about ensuring our naval superiority. In closing, it is clear that our greatest asset is the extraordinary men and women who serve, our sailors and Marines. We will continue to invest in them through smarter recruitment, better training, and targeted retention efforts to retain top-tier talent. And we will prioritize quality of service initiatives to ensure that our sailors, Marines, and their families have the resources they need. Our job, my job, is to ensure they have every tool, every advantage, and every ounce of support they need to succeed. Thank you for your support. I look forward to your questions.
Well, good morning. Chairman McConnell, Chair Collins, Chair Schatz, distinguished members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to appear before you today. alongside Secretary Phelan and Admiral Kilby, to represent your Marine Corps. I'm going to keep my comments short so I can answer your questions. But first, I'd like to start by sharing the Marine Corps' top 3 priorities. First is restoring a 3.0 amphibious-ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. That means 1 MU operating off the East Coast, 1 MU operating off the West Coast, and the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit operating episodically out of Okinawa, Japan. The Amphibious Ready Group with the Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked is the most versatile tool in our nation's arsenal. It's the Swiss Army knife of the Joint Force. We're working closely with our Navy partners to maximize this capability. Our second priority is accelerating force design. Force design is our journey to adapt to the changing character of war. We're in the implementation phase now, fielding new capabilities and reshaping formations across the force, from our Marine Expeditionary Units and Marine Littoral Regiments to our Marine Expeditionary Forces. And finally, improving quality of life. Every Marine deserves a clean and safe place to lay their head down at night after a hard day's work. Barracks 2030 is how we're getting after this. It is the most consequential housing investment in our history. And quality of life goes beyond our barracks. We're also investing in the well-being of Marine families, because retaining our Marines means supporting those who stand beside them. They say you recruit the Marine, but you retain the family. And I'll close with this. Your Marines remain the most ready when the nation is least ready. A forward-postured force, trained for combat, and built to deliver flexible, lethal options anytime, anywhere. Thank you again for your trust and support, and I look forward to your questions.
Chairman Collins, Chairman McConnell, Senator Schatz, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the posture of the United States Navy. Your Navy provides our nation with the sea power and sea control needed to preserve our way of life and ensure our security and prosperity. Your oversight and funding ensure we are ready when the nation calls. I am pleased to testify alongside Secretary Phelan, who brings needed and unique skills and experience to help us accelerate the work of the Navy, and alongside my partner, General Smith, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. In the past year, our sailors have defeated hundreds of drones and missiles, executed dozens of offensive strikes in the Red Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean. They have strengthened alliances and deterred Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific. They have supported operations on the southern border, and they have maintained an unbroken strategic deterrent with our ballistic missile submarines. In short, the Navy, integrated with the Joint Force, remains postured and ready to fight and win. We remain committed to a strong global Navy, one that is prepared to defend our homeland, deter our adversaries, and prevail in war. We are laser-focused on China as our most consequential opponent while strengthening the defense of our homeland. We prioritize the operations, training, and readiness accounts to ensure our naval forces remain ready, resilient, and able to execute national tasking. The Navy and Marine Corps preserve peace through strength through investments in our strategic deterrence of our defense industrial base and our installations via initiatives like the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. More importantly, we are continuing our strong commitment to our people, our sailors and our Navy families and our civilians through pay raises, investments in quality of service such as unaccompanied housing and childcare. But we are facing challenges. First, our platforms are not as ready as they need to be. We set an ambitious goal to make 80% of our ships, submarines, and aircraft combat surge ready by 1 January 2027. To do that, we are reducing maintenance delays and improving manning, training, modernization, and sustainment. Second, the Navy has 22,950 gaps at sea. Thanks to process improvements and targeted investments, we are on plan to reduce that number significantly by the end of 2026. We are committed to attracting and developing Americans who can innovate, solve hard problems, and dominate in combat. The Navy contracted over 40,000 sailors last year, the most since 2003. And as of last week, we have surpassed our 2025 goal of recruiting 40,600 sailors. We expect to reach 42,000 contracts by the end of the fiscal year. And third, our ordnance expenditures in the Red Sea have highlighted the strain on our munitions industrial base. The Navy is working with traditional primes and new entrants to close this gap. developing kinetic and non-kinetic weapons at speed and scale. In all these efforts, consistent and predictable funding is foundational, and we appreciate the continued support of this committee. In closing, I am proud of our Navy's accomplishments in the past year, and I'm excited about the growing consensus that is powering our maritime rejuvenation. The whole of government and the whole of nation effort is essential to our security and prosperity. We have work to do to ensure that we remain the world's most premier maritime force for another 250 years. Your leadership and support are critical in achieving this imperative. On behalf of our sailors, civilians, and families around the world, thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. As I indicated in my opening statement, shipbuilding, as you know, enjoys strong bipartisan support. And I'm perplexed as to why the budget request would move $25 billion in shipbuilding over into reconciliation, where you have a cliff at some point. The cliff, of course, could become too soon. And why, Mr. Secretary, in your view, is the shipbuilding $25 billion not still in the base request?
Thank you, Chairman, for the question. I know it's an important one to you, and appreciated spending time with you recently. Look, the Department of the Navy supports a solution that provides consistent additional funding for the Navy and the Marine Corps to meet the challenges that we need. I think at the end of the day, we're going to need both the mandatory and discretionary funding to operate in fiscal year 26. So we call it one budget, two bills. We need both in order to operate and meet our objectives. Every program we have is extremely important. One of the tough things, as I said in my opening statement, this readiness challenge is how I have to optimally allocate capital because, look, the bad news is we have underinvested in the U.S. Navy for a long time in our infrastructure, in our programs, in the shipbuilding maritime industrial base, and those bills are all coming due. We have deferred them in multiple ways. We've maintained ships at 50% maintenance levels, and you should not do that. We have done that, and they're all coming at the same time. So it is a big challenge that we're dealing with. But to answer your question, Senator, we're going to need both in order to meet our objectives.
Let's switch to AUKUS. The Congress, on a bipartisan basis, has approved it. The Australians are contributing billions of dollars to the initiative. Could you explain why the department would signal to our closest partners, the Brits and the Aussies, that we're considering pulling the plug on the whole thing? What kind of message, what kind of message are we sending to the very allies and partners we expect to fight side by side with us in the Indo-Pacific?
And thank you, Chairman, for the question. Australia and the UK are our most enduring allies and very important allies, in particular in the Indo-Pacific. I think, just like the British, a new administration came in, they are reviewing that agreement, and that is what the current administration is doing. Our new administration is, we're taking a look at the agreement, trying to understand it completely and thoroughly, and I look forward to posting you after that review is done. But I don't think we are signaling in any way, shape, or form that we are not committed. I think the President recently talked about the importance with the British Prime Minister. They're very important allies. This is an important treaty. I think we just want to make sure that it makes sense, and so it's just being reviewed. And Admiral Kilby can elaborate on some of the things we've been doing with the Australians and the British as well.
Well, I'm sorry.
Just to add to what Secretary Phelan said, We are doing significant work with the Australians as far as the repair capability. They're embarked on our ships right now and training with us from an operational perspective, and they're in Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. And we've just sent our first folks over to SRF West Sterling to stand up that base there. So those are some of the practical improvements that have happened over the last year.
I've got one more question, then we'll turn this into shots. We need more munitions, air defense interceptors, long-range fires, artillery. Recent conflicts tell us we need a lot more of them. Recent experience tells us our industry isn't producing them fast enough. So, how are the Navy and Marine Corps addressing this challenge? Does the Navy's budget fully utilize the production capacity of the defense industrial base?
Thank you again, Senator, for that question. A very important one. Look, fully funding our munitions industrial base is essential, both for the near term and the future. As I think Admiral Kilby mentioned in his opening statement, we're looking at a number of different avenues, including other parties and different ways of making some of these munitions. This is a huge priority from both the Secretary of Defense and the President, and we are putting as much effort and time into this as we are on shipbuilding. So it is critical. I look forward to coming back to you with some of the ideas and suggestions we have, but your point is absolutely well taken. It's something we need to focus on and get fixed.
Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chairman. The DoD is under a full-year continuing resolution for the first time in its history, and I think we can all agree that it is extremely damaging for how the department can plan for the long term. So I'll start with the Secretary and then the Commandant and then the Acting CNO. Just a quick yes or no question. Secretary, do you oppose a full-year CR for the Navy and Marine Corps in fiscal year 26?
I do oppose it, yes.
Commandant?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Just to follow up on Chair McConnell's point about the extraordinary parliamentary authorities in reconciliation, traditionally, historically, the things that go in a reconciliation package are the things that can't pass on a bipartisan basis. There have been little exceptions, but let's just remember that an increase in spending for shipbuilding is not something that Democrats would block. And so the model in this modern Senate, which is granted different from the Senate of 10 years ago and 30 years ago and so on, but the model has been that you explore bipartisanship, you explore achieving cloture and making this committee relevant and important and a sort of center of power in the Article I branch. And if you fail, then you have these extraordinary authorities to go elsewhere. But to go elsewhere before you even try to cut a deal with Democrats who are saying, we'd like to cut a deal, may not be the wisest course of action. Secretary, you support the continuation of AUKUS, is that correct?
What I said, Senator, is we're evaluating the program. I think they are two of our enduring and most important allies. I have not had time yet to review that package, but that is going on, and we're looking at that.
Understanding how it works and your right and obligation to review it is one thing, but you're obviously familiar with the concept. Do you support the continuation of some version of this?
Again, Senator, I have to take a look at this program and understand how it works. As you know, we're challenged in the building of our submarines, so I want to, make sure we can abide by our end of the deal, and I also need to make sure that it's not going to put our forces at a disadvantage. So it's hard for me to answer that construct because I don't understand the construct. I'm not trying to evade it, but should they be great allies and should we be supportive? The answer is yes.
The latest round of conflict in the Middle East utilized large amounts of munitions to defend Israel from Iranian strikes. Does the Navy currently have all the SM-3s it needs for global threats?
I'll take this. We do, sir, but we are, to your point, using them at an alarming rate. As you know, those are missiles procured by the Missile Defense Agency and then delivered to the Navy for our use, and we are using them quite effectively in the defense of Israel.
Just about the Asia-Pacific region, in '24, DoD moved the Abraham Lincoln away from the Indo-Pacific to support operations in the Middle East. Just this month, we moved the USS Nimitz from the Indo-Pacific, and now the Gerald Ford will go to the region. That's 3 carrier strike groups. Can you reassure our allies in the Indo-Pacific that we've got our eye on the ball there?
I can tell you, sir, sitting in the tank as the acting chief, that every combatant commander is involved in these decisions and understands what's happening. The benefit of your Navy is we have flexibility. So if the decision is made to change and flex and send a carrier strike group to the Indo-Pacific, we can do that at very short notice, and they're all trained and ready to go.
Thank you. Secretary, I sent you a letter and asked for a response by the 16th of June, and we're still waiting on that. My understanding is it's on your desk for review, so I want to be as fair as possible. But the use of a Hawaiian island for inert bombing training cannot be called essential and cannot be waved away on the basis of it being important for national security. We have many bases and installations in Hawaii, and we support the Department of Defense's presence in Hawaii, but it is not enough to just say this is for national security. And so the congressional delegation from Hawaii and including the governor of Hawaii are essentially asking some very simple questions. Among them, have you done an alternatives analysis? Is this the only place that you can conduct a training where you're dropping 500-pound inert bombs? Why are you scaling this up? When do you conduct these activities? Why not CNMI or California or anywhere else? I don't expect you to answer that in the next 4 seconds, but I'd like your quick comments and your commitment to get back to the delegation in writing as soon as possible.
I did recently get your letter. Thanks for sending that. And obviously, we spoke on the phone briefly as well. Look, we've been using that range for some time, both us and the Air Force, from what I understand. It is an important range, and I look forward to getting back to you with an appropriate answer and studies we've looked at in terms of others as well.
Thank you.
I will come back to you. Thank you.
Senator Collins, followed by Senator Reed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome. Let me begin by thanking you for visiting the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and Bath Iron Works in the state of Maine as you are touring various shipyards, not only in the United States, but also overseas. I think that's a very effective approach. I want to echo the concerns that the chairman raised about relying on reconciliation for shipbuilding. Reconciliation was always meant to be just a one-time funding surge. It has a long tail to it. Yet, even when taken together, the administration's budget request combined with reconciliation funding would keep us on the prior administration's completely inadequate trajectory in terms of shipbuilding at a time when China has nearly 400 ships and our U.S. Navy has only 293 ships. So I would hope that the administration would take a hard look at increasing the base budget to meet the realities of today's global threats and also inflation. In that regard, I worked hard to secure funding in the fiscal year 25 CR for a third Arleigh option ship to meet operational requirements and to help sustain the shipbuilding workforce and industrial base. I remain concerned about the timing for this award. Can you provide us with an update on when the Navy intends to execute the third option?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate the question. I know a very important one to you. We are in the midst of analyzing the entire force posture and our manned-unmanned balance and what that should look like and how it should work going forward. Obviously, my visit to Bath Iron Works and Portsmouth was very informative. There's been a lot of great changes at Portsmouth in particular that I've seen that I'm hoping to apply to some of the other public shipyards as well that will help increase the efficiency there. As it relates to the third DDG, we're in the kind of final innings of getting to that and trying to sort through that and really looking at the whole fleet posture. Again, trying to balance the manned, unmanned. I think, as I said before, the nature of warfare is changing very rapidly, and I think how it's going to be fought out in the oceans is going to be very different, and we need to be really thinking about that and understanding how they'll work collaboratively. So I look forward to coming back to you soon with that and coming back to you.
Thank you. There's no doubt that the nature of warfare has changed dramatically, but I think that those who at one time doubted the worth of the surface Navy have been proven wrong. One has only to look at the role that our destroyers have played in shooting down the Houthi missiles and keeping the shipping lanes open in the Red Sea to see just how essential not only our submarines are, but our surface Navy. Admiral Kilby, the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, known as SIOP, is crucial to the Navy's comprehensive multi-decade initiative to modernize and recapitalize the nation's 4 public shipyards to support current and future nuclear power warship maintenance. The expansion of Dry Dock 1 at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is essential for Virginia-class submarine maintenance. Is the Navy on track to meeting its operational availability date so that we can deal with the backlog of maintenance?
Yes, ma'am. I believe we are. I appreciate the work that is being done there. You know, my analogy is it's like pulling into a Jiffy Lube where you're ripping out bays 1 and 3 and you're working on cars in bay 2, and that's what that shipyard and all our shipyards are doing every day. So I'm committed to that, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reed, followed by Senator Graham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you for your great service to the nation. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us in Newport at Naval War College. You did a superb job. Thank you very much, sir. At the end of last year, the Navy was considering a proposal from the submarine builders called the Shipyard Accountability and Workforce Support, or SOARS, initiative. Ultimately, OMB and the Navy decided not to implement this proposal. Are you still considering SOARS, Mr. Secretary?
Senator, thank you for the question. I think we are looking at all options as it relates to funding for the maritime industrial base and in particular the submarine programs. As I said earlier, look, we need the funding, we need to get this done, and the submarines are quite critical. I'm still trying to get my arms around the actual costs and the budgeting, and this comes actually back to the audit, which we can talk at another stage, but we need to get our arms around what these are going to cost and come back to you and be very transparent and open with you as to when we're going to get them done and how much they're actually going to cost.
Right. And could this be done so that it could be included in our FY26 deliberations in terms of timing?
I don't think so. We will try, sir.
Okay. I appreciate that. The Virginia-class submarines, the Navy is requesting $816.7 million for one Virginia-class submarine because it assumes an amount of $6.5 billion for another boat in reconciliation funding. But both the House and Senate budget reconciliation text only includes $4.6 billion for one Virginia-class boat in FY26. Can you explain the discrepancy? Are we going to be able to build 2 a year?
Sir, we're working hard to get to that build rate that we need to. Right now, we're at 1.1 subs a year. We got to work hard to get exactly where you want to go. I'm not satisfied with it. The Secretary is not satisfied with it. The money in our industrial base, as well as the money to procure the subs, I believe will help us get there. But we need to come back and report to you regularly on where we are with that build rate.
But at this point, if we assume it's $4.6 billion in the reconciliation and $816 million in your budget, we can't get up to the 2 per year basis. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that, sir. I'll have to get back to you.
Thank you. The other aspect of this, of course, is we're trying to send a constant demand signal to the suppliers, but more importantly, the subcontractors, that they will have work and they will have the ability to produce and not be afraid of that we have parts sitting on the shelf or orders that are not forthcoming. Let me shift to the Columbia-class program. It's the Navy's #1 priority. Can you give an update, either the Secretary or the CNO, about the schedule delays of Columbia-class, and what are you doing about them?
I'll start and then defer to the Secretary. We now are on a pace to deliver that sub approximately 2 years late, March of '29. We are trying desperately to claw back that schedule. I work with the PEO, as does the Secretary, on where there's opportunities there to move that to the left. I'm optimistic, but the schedule of March of '29 is where we're at. I'm going to try to pull it to the left to deliver it earlier, sir.
Well, again, going back to the contrast between the budget and reconciliation, the budget requests $1.93 billion for Columbia in advanced procurement funding, but there's no Columbia money in either the House or the Senate reconciliation bill. So will this $1.93 billion get you back to your already delayed schedule?
I believe it will, sir. But again, we have to make the industrial base do what it's designed to do. So that is going to require a lot of work on both sides of the government and industry to make that happen, and we're committed to that work.
A final question is that working with Senator McCain years ago, we developed the submarine industrial base funding, which the Navy thankfully incorporated into your budget. We do not have as yet any indication of what your plans are for what is now called the Maritime Industrial Base Program. Can you give us an idea, Mr. Secretary?
Thank you for the question, Senator. We are working on those plans as we speak, and trust me, Columbia has massive priority. We're very focused on it, but I look forward to sharing those plans with you as they get further developed.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham, followed by Senator Baldwin and Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Navy and Marine Corps families out there, you sacrifice a lot for this country, and we appreciate it. I think those two services, families are torn apart in terms of deployment, so it's not lost upon me the sacrifices of the families. And General Smith, we need to take care of our families in the Marine Corps and the Navy. The Navy fleet goal for Battle Force ships is 381 manned, 134 unmanned, for 515 fleet size. Ms. Secretary, is that the right number still?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I know, very important to you. One, I should just make her, we're currently at 292, not 293, just so I get that on the record. Look, we are still, I am working through those numbers and trying to get to those numbers.
We don't know yet. You're going to get back with us about, is that still the
I'm
right?
going to get back to you as to what the right number
Okay,
is,
great.
sir.
Let's say for a moment that was the right number. When can we expect to have all this stuff built? In the next 10 years?
That's another one I'm going to have to get back to you. I think it'll be
That's
very
fine,
hard.
that's fine, because the reason I ask that, I don't know if it's the right number. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I know this, that China has 400 ships, and by 2030, they're going to have 435. So we need to get on with it. And it's really not blaming you, it's just a system. And we need to have a goal and get to it like the Manhattan Project. I'd like to have a pot of funding for the Navy outside of the budget top line so we could get this done, because we're never going to get it done in the top line. So if it's important to us as a nation, we'll give you more money and more flexibility. Budgets are based on threats. Is that right, Admiral?
I hope so, sir.
Well, they better be,
Yes,
because
sir.
we don't want to make it a jobs program. Let's look at the threats. Is Iran a threat to the United States?
I believe it is.
Okay, I do too. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, does that matter to the United States in terms of how it ends?
I believe it does.
Is China watching what happens with Russia regarding their invasion of Iran,
Yes, sir.
and how that ends could affect whether or not they invade Taiwan? Is that correct?
I believe so.
China has a pretty ambitious plan for the region and the world. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
ISIS and Al-Qaeda, General Smith, they're still out there, right?
They are, Senator.
Yeah, they want to come here and kill us if they can get here. Is that right?
They would.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's get back to Iran. Congratulations on the attack, Operation Midnight Hammer, and the Navy role in it. I disagree with my Democratic colleague. I think this was a necessary, effective, and quite frankly, brilliant, bold, long overdue effort by the United States to substantially degrade or destroy Iran's enrichment capability, which seems to be everybody's goal for them not to have a nuclear weapon. Well, you can't really have a nuclear weapon if you can't enrich, and so I support that. But about negotiations and the ceasefire. If the ceasefire leads to peace, it's a really good thing. If the ceasefire leads to rearming and regrouping of Iran, it's probably a step backwards. Does anybody know if Iran has changed its regime goal of destroying the state of Israel? Has there been any indication they've abandoned that goal?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Has there been any indication they've abandoned the goal of dominate Islam and to attack Saudi Arabia as the leading Sunni state?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Okay. Is there any indication that they are less antagonistic toward us as a nation after the ceasefire? Yeah, a good answer, not to my knowledge. Yeah,
Not to my knowledge.
I agree with it, not to my knowledge. The only reason I mention all this is that we're asking Israel to sit down at a table with people who have it in their equivalent of the Constitution to destroy the state of Israel. How do you negotiate with somebody who writes down in their founding document, we want to kill all the Jews? So what I'm asking our country and the world to understand is if we can get peace, that would be great. But the only way you're really going to have peace is for the regime to change its behavior, either through personnel or ideology. And I just want to say this very clearly. Until Iran renounces their regime goal of destroying the Jewish state, until Iran recognizes the right of Israel to exist as a nation and the Jews to exist as a people, we're nowhere closer to peace than we were before. The capability of Iran to enact their agenda has been greatly reduced. Hats off to President Trump and our military. But until their desire changes, we need to stick with Israel and understand who we're dealing with. Thank you.
Senator Baldwin and then Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you recently visited the Constellation-class frigate shipyard in Marinette, Wisconsin. And when we met, I was glad to hear that you had a positive impression of the workforce, use of technology, and private investments into the yard infrastructure and operations. The skilled Wisconsinites who helped build the frigate are proud of their contributions to U.S. national security, and I'm glad that you had an opportunity to meet with them. I understand the program's future is under review. So I want to highlight the progress made in its design. I understand that 85% of the functional design products have been approved by the Navy, with the remaining sections to be completed later this summer. There have also been improvements in workforce recruitment and retention, with the latter improving by 40%. These two key metrics show a shipbuilding program that is getting back on track. And I continue to believe that the frigate must be a key part of President Trump's goal to grow the size and capability of the Navy fleet, as well as revitalize the maritime industry, including in the Great Lakes region. So, Mr. Secretary, can you please share your plans for the frigate program?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I know a very important one to you, and I enjoyed our time in your office. Look, the frigate program has a number of challenges, and I am currently evaluating it both as it fits in the overall force posture and in the program itself. At the end of the day, and I also appreciate the investment that's been made by Fincantieri into the shipyard. What I would say, and I probably should have said it earlier, is we have more ships to build than we can for 10 years that our shipyards can handle. So I am not concerned about work for shipyards in America. We cannot build what we need today. We can't come close. So there is an enormous amount that needs to be done. So I look forward to chatting with you more. We're still going through this as it relates to the frigate program and the challenges that are currently in place with it. And I will follow up with you on that once we've made a decision.
And I have a follow-on question on this topic. I know that you and President Trump share my concern that China is outpacing us dramatically, both in shipbuilding, both militarily and commercially, and that we need to take action to level the playing field because they're cheating. That work began with the United States Trade Representative's Section 301 investigation into China's shipbuilding dominance. The actions that the USTR has taken in response to that investigation and the introduction of the bipartisan Ships for America Act. But we really do need, Mr. Secretary, a whole-of-government approach to ensure success and strengthen our shipyards here at home. I was concerned to hear that you have made comments indicating that you are open to all options to build ships as quickly as possible. So, Mr. Secretary, do you plan to pursue building U.S. military vessels in foreign countries?
Senator, thank you for the question. Look, all options have to be on the table. The way I look at this is we have a short-term issue and a longer-term issue. The short-term issue is, to your point on China and the number of ships, we need to get hulls in the water, and I need to figure out how to do that as fast as we can. And
So the answer is yes, you're considering
We're considering
shipbuilding.
it. All options, as I said, are on the table. I think at the end of the day, the long run of what we are trying to do and what the president really wants to have happen is to build out our maritime industrial base, to look at, can we expand capacity at existing yards? Do we need new yards?
So I just want to underscore, I am a strong believer in using U.S. tax dollars to support U.S. workers and U.S. businesses, and I believe in Buy America policies for building naval ships. Just want to put that on the record. Finally, I want to ask you to uphold the integrity of your office by not caving into political partisan pressures to rename a whole fleet of ships honoring civil rights leaders. When Secretary Hegseth was before this committee, I made clear that his spiteful decision to rename the U.S. naval ship Harvey Milk, and intentionally do so during Pride Month, disparages not only Navy veteran Harvey Milk, but countless service members who were and continue to be wrongfully discharged. The John Lewis class of ships honors American leaders such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Harriet Tubman, and Robert F. Kennedy for their efforts to combat inequality. If you proceed with renaming the Harvey Milk, will you also rename the U.S. naval ship Robert F. Kennedy?
Senator, thank you for the question. I know it's an important topic to you.
And to many.
And to many, absolutely. I think we are reviewing all naval installations and ships and making sure they align with the priorities of the President and the Secretary of Defense that they've outlined.
This committee will continue to pursue serious work in the interests of American national security, and I ask you to choose to join us in that endeavor, and I hope that we can agree that there's more important work to do than what we're just discussing.
Senator Kennedy, and then Senator Murray, and then Senator Moran.
General, is the theocracy in Iran an enemy of the American people and all people who refuse to adopt the theocracy's radical version of Islam?
Senator, I'm not a scholar in that regard, but I would say that Iran presents a clear and present danger to all those who do not bend to
Well, do
their
you think
will.
they're our friend?
They are not our friend.
And how long have they not been our friend and the world's friend?
For many decades, sir.
How many innocent people has the theocracy in Iran killed because they refuse to adopt the theocracy's radical version of Islam?
I don't have a number, but it's in the thousands.
Tens of thousands, right?
I would think so, yes, sir.
Hundreds of thousands, right?
Again, I don't have the exact number, but I would not be surprised if it were.
If the theocracy in Iran developed a nuclear weapon, would they be more or less dangerous?
Well, they would be far more dangerous, Senator. There's a saying, if your neighbor says he's going to kill you, you should believe him.
Can we agree that the president's decision to destroy the Iranian theocracy's nuclear weapon capabilities made the world safer?
I would say it did.
What's impetuous mean?
Well, sir, impetuous means, again, I'm a poli-sci major from the Texas State School. Impetuous means flippant.
Yeah,
I would say
without
flippant.
thought, without care.
Yes, sir.
You're not a politician, are you?
No, sir, I am not.
Okay. One of my friends on the committee said that America's decision to destroy the Iranian theocracy's ability to make a nuclear bomb was impetuous. Do you think that's an accurate description in light of the theocracy's years of hatred and bloodshed?
Well, Senator, I would say it is a good thing that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I would too. I don't understand why we can't agree on that. I don't. Let me talk about shipbuilding in a few minutes I have. Mr. Secretary, for the last 2 decades, well, let me ask the Admiral. He's not a politician either. Admiral, in the last 2 decades, we've doubled the amount of money we have given the Navy to build ships. We've actually had fewer ships today because we've retired more than we've built. Tell me why in 30 seconds.
Well, the simple answer, sir, is we were building 4 or 5 DDGs a year in the mid-'90s, and we're building 2 a year now. So
Why?
that's the
We've
simple
given you
math.
more money.
Well, they cost more money, sir.
How much money do you need to catch up to China?
I'll have to get back to you on the specific answer. I think I'd be satisfied in the meantime to just build at the rate we're supposed to and not be behind.
How far behind are we?
We're behind in every ship class to different rates,
Okay.
but at least years.
We can't catch up without our private sector shipyards, can we?
We cannot.
Okay. Both Tier 1 and Tier 2 shipyards, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've got to do better, Admiral. It's unacceptable. In the last few seconds I have, I want to make a comment about the money and the way we're going to get it to you. Nothing would please me more. I would do old man backflips to see the United States Congress put together a budget supporting our military that looks like somebody designed the damn thing on purpose. Last year, this committee worked very hard. We put together 12 bipartisan bills. A lot of us had to swallow things we didn't want to swallow, but we wanted to get it to the floor. And Senator Schumer refused to even put the bill on the floor. Now, what makes anyone with an IQ above their weight or their age think that now that he is in the minority, Senator Schumer is going to cooperate with us to get a budget on the floor? What I'm trying to tell you is, back here on planet Earth, you're going to have to make do with what the money we get you on reconciliation. We're headed toward a series of CRs. I hope I'm wrong. But again, I live on planet Earth. We can do more than one reconciliation bill, but you and your colleagues need to start planning for that eventuality. Maybe it'll change. Maybe someday donkeys will fly backwards too. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see it. That's regrettable, but it's reality. We need to plan for it. Just like we had to plan for the reality of Iran having a nuclear weapon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Murray and then Senator Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, located in my home state of Washington, is one of the largest shipyards in the country and the only shipyard on the entire West Coast that can dry dock Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. It's a huge asset to the Navy and the overall Indo-Pacific strategy. Right now, PSNS is undergoing important renovations to address seismic vulnerabilities and prepare for the new Ford-class aircraft carriers. This administration, however, is actively encouraging our shipbuilders to leave their jobs and putting up absurd barriers to hiring new civilian workers. Almost 2,000 naval shipyard workers have already taken the deferred resignation under the threat of looming mass layoffs. And Trump's Office of Personnel Management is insisting on approving civilians one by one, which is creating massive slowdowns and ballooning wait lists to hire the workers that we need at every base in this country. And on top of that, on May 29th, OPM added a requirement for new civilian, nonpartisan hires to write about how they would, quote, advance the president's executive orders and policy priorities as part of their application process. Secretary Phelan, how does a welder's fluency in or support of Trump's executive orders relate to their qualifications as a welder?
Senator, thank you for the question. I did visit Puget Sound and saw a lot of the impressive work that was done there. As to your question on the, I believe what you're referring to is the civilian loyalty oath, and my understanding is the Department of the Navy continues to use the same appointment affidavit it's been using since 2002 for civilian hires, and we are waiting for guidance from the Department of Defense as it relates to any revisions.
Well, will you push back on OPM's political purity tests and object to them individually approving civilian hires?
Senator, I'll have to wait to see what it is they recommend before I tell you which way I'm going to go.
From my position, a nonpartisan government hire should not need to articulate which Trump policy they like best just to get hired, and a welder should not need to share their favorite Trump executive order. This is putting us behind. So I I just think that this is something that we all need to take notice of, and I hope as you get your guidance that you push back on that. Second question, Naval Base Kitsap, also in my state, is the third largest Navy base in the United States. It's home to 15,000 service members, nearly 18,000 family members and retirees. But since 2022, the Defense Health Agency has repeatedly ordered the base's hospital to cut critical staff and medical care, which has been devastating for our service members and their families' access to health care. Right now, in fact, Naval Hospital Bremerton's internal medicine department has zero physicians for over 2,000 patients. Instead of hiring anyone, DHA is forcing patients now to travel over an hour on a good day each way to Madigan Army Medical Center at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Mr. Secretary, this is just unacceptable. Can you fill me in on what the Navy is doing to fill those vacancies at Bremerton?
Senator, thank you for the question. As you know, I've been visiting a number of different installations of ours, and from some of the conditions of the barracks to some of the conditions of the medical facilities, et cetera, we have issues at most of them. On that specific one, I'm going to have to get back to you and get some more detail on it, which I will do.
Admiral, do you have anything to add?
I agree with your assessment, ma'am. There are challenges with DHA across the board for the Navy, and we're working, like all the other services, to make sure we're providing the best health care we can for our service members and our families.
This is a readiness issue. It's a retention issue. It's personal for these families. So please, if you could get back to me about what steps we are going to take to fix this. Finally, let me ask you about Naval Station Everett. It was designated as the home station for the new class of frigates in 2022. However, the design delays have postponed production for the last 3 years. I understand that you and the department leadership are considering several options for the future of the Constellation-class frigate, and I'd emphasize this committee needs the budget details to put this bill together. So if you can make sure we have that and talk for a minute about what you see as the implications for Everett under the different scenarios the department might propose for the frigate program.
So let me take that one for the record and come back to you.
I would appreciate the response to that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moran, followed by Senator Durbin. Senator Capito, she returns, and then Senator Hoeven.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Secretary, Admiral, General, thank you for your presence and your service. Let me start with you, General Smith. You would be aware that the Army has decided to transition from traditional rotary wing tilt rotor aircraft for its FLRAA program. Can you highlight your experience in the Navy about the speed, range, runway independence, the overall operation and relevance of tilt rotor technology that it brings to the warfighter?
Yeah, I can, Senator. Our MV-22 is the workhorse of our fleet. It provides vital speed and range capability and an unmatched versatility as to where it can land. It can land like an airplane, can take off like a helicopter, can carry a pretty significant internal load, and can go at speed.
Thank you, sir. Admiral, let me ask you a question. There's been $4 billion in damage from fires on board ships undergoing maintenance from 2008 to 2022. The GAO determined that these ships face a high risk of fire because repairs involve sparks or welding in confined areas. Is the Navy evaluating alternative repair processes like the press connect fittings, which do not require open flames?
Sir, I'm open to evaluating all those technologies as well as ensuring that we're doing the right things when we're doing hot work on our ships to mitigate that potential. I share your concern.
What's the status of where you are on this topic?
I will have to get back to you on that specific technology, but we have made a lot of efforts to combat that dangerous environment from a supervisory perspective, et cetera. But I'm open to that, sir, and I'll get back to you.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Phelan and/or Admiral Kilby, the importance of the P-8A Poseidon. Can you elaborate on the importance of this aircraft in fulfilling operational requirements?
Sure. It is a key component, especially now with the increasing out-of-area deployments of submarines from Russia as well as China. So to me, it is a key asset for that theater ASW commander to understand where those threatening subs are, localize them, and then deal with them accordingly.
General Smith, thank you, sir. General Smith, the budget details we have, which are scarce, it indicates that the Marines plan to buy 6 less CH-53K King Stallion aircraft than the previous budget had indicated. Would you describe the importance of the King Stallion to the Marine Corps and its operations in the Pacific? And have there been operational changes that necessitate a reduction in this heavy lift capacity?
Senator, we're fully committed to the CH-53 Kilo, the King Stallion. It is the workhorse of our fleet. Again, it can lift itself. It can haul massive external and internal loads and refuel in flight, giving it an almost unlimited range. So we're fully committed to the CH-53 Kilo.
And therefore, the reduction in the request?
Senator, I'll have to get back to you on this, on the details for why that was.
Okay, thank you. Let me just mention the T-45 aircraft. It is aging. We continue to see repeated groundings and poor readiness associated with this legacy aircraft. Delays in training and student production, higher costs, reduced lethality. I just would encourage you to find the solution that is a replacement to the T-45 in an expeditious, as quick as possible manner. I don't know whether any of you need to comment on that, but it is my encouragement.
I share your concern, sir, and you have my commitment to continue to work that issue.
Thank you very much. And finally, the Army announced the termination of the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle program. This was a joint Army-Marine program, and the Army's termination will impact the Marine program, I assume. General Smith, when did the Army consult with the Marine Corps on their decision to terminate the JLTV? And has the Marine Corps assessed the impact on the Army's program, the elimination of this program, on the Marines program?
Well, sir, we were not consulted, although, again, I'm not sure I would have consulted General George had I decided to do that as well. It will obviously throw the APUC up. The average per unit cost will go up, which means without an increase in budget, we're going to buy less of them.
Okay. Thank you, sirs.
All right, Senator Durbin and then Senator Hoeven.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the panel for being with us today. There's one aspect of the United States military which is not unique but is noteworthy that I have always marveled at, and that is the efforts made to prepare the men and women who serve in your various branches for battle and for service, which include not only your training, obvious training, but civic education as well. But all of our branches of the service have been careful to draw the line when it comes to partisanship and political involvement. And I would say with the time I've been involved in public life, very few exceptions. Men and women in the military do not display partisan feelings when it comes to politics in America. This side of the table is largely political animals. That side, particularly those in uniform, we expect to be somewhat down the middle of the road, not involved in any partisan identification activity. General Smith, am I right in that observation?
Senator, you are. We are apolitical by nature.
Why is that important?
Well, it's important to our Constitution because we support the Commander-in-Chief, whoever he or she may be.
Admiral Kilby?
I concur.
Secretary Phelan?
I concur.
I'm glad. I hope that I had dinner Saturday night with a friend who had been in the military for over 30 years, and he said his greatest fear was evidence he's seen of partisan activity in the uniformed military. I hope that doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't favor my party, their party, any party in that regard. I'd like to say a word, or have you say a word about the quarterdeck of the Navy, which is what we characterize Great Lakes Naval Training Station. It's the only boot camp and primary surface warfare specialty training center in the United States. And in the state of Illinois, we are damn proud of it. I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is quality of life, always. I can recall speaking to a chief petty officer who was transferred from Virginia to Illinois and asking him how his family liked Great Lakes. And he said, I didn't bring my family. I left my family behind in Virginia. I said, why? He said, because the schools here are not that good for Navy families. I think that's changed because that observation was made many years ago. But I'd ask you, Mr. Secretary, when it comes to quality of life, what efforts are you making? What efforts should I be making to address any quality of life issues for those who are part of Great Lakes?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Obviously, important one to you and one of my top priorities as well, as I mentioned in my opening statement. You know, I continue to visit as many infrastructure bases as I can, and I am examining a number of different things. One, some of the private management of our infrastructure and bases. I'm still trying to understand how that economic model works and what exactly are we paying for. To be honest, I was in Guam and driving by a set of barracks in Guam. I saw a perfectly manicured golf course, and I saw buildings which I thought were condemned, which actually had sailors and Marines in there. So I stopped, went into the barracks, went into 2 different unaccompanied housing barracks with mold all over the place, a bathroom that was beyond words. I instructed the admiral there to have our sailors and Marines out of those barracks within 5 days or 10 days because I had just toured a brand new barracks that we had built that was apparently going to take 4 to 5 months to be inspected and cleared for them to move in, yet it looked perfectly fine to me. So I will guarantee you we are going to change the quality of life. We have initiated with the Navy a full review of the barracks. The Marines did that last year, and we are beginning to initiate changes on that. I've heard the complaint you talked about families not being able, when you have 2 service members, one being deployed, being sent somewhere else from the other. We're going to try to fix that because it is a key to our retention, is their quality of life.
I would
and
just
key to
say,
readiness.
just in the few seconds remaining, what you just described in Guam is similar to a situation we're facing at Great Lakes. One of the privatized military housing communities sat empty because 70% of its units were condemned and unlivable. Imagine that. It strikes my heart to think that the men and women who might have occupied that would be in those circumstances. We can't let that happen. When it comes to access to education, it is one of the highest priorities of all families, including Navy families and Marine families. So it's my priority too. Thank you.
Sir, it's appalling, and we are going to fix it.
Thank you. I want to help.
Senator Hoban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Kilby, for the attack on Qatar yesterday, 14 missiles by Iran. Were they shot down by Qatar? Were they shot down by our forces? And by what systems? To the extent you can cover any of that in non-confidential, would you go
Yeah, I
through that?
can get you specifics, sir, but I believe the Patriot system was the most effective U.S. system in support of that. Whether or not there was any Qatar defensive measures taken that were excessive, I'll have to get back to you on that.
So primarily it was our Patriot batteries?
Sir.
At UD there that
Yes,
they
sir.
fired on? Okay. For all 3 of you, starting with you, Mr. Secretary, do you think that the United States needs to keep its lead in ISR technology, or can we just tell the Air Force and Space Force, nah, we don't need the new ISR systems, we'll just do everything with satellites? Or do you think in the near-peer competition and for what's going on in Ukraine and the Middle East and everywhere else, we actually need the new ISR technologies that will enable us to make sure that we can be there for long periods of time with nobody knowing and with kinetic capabilities?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, we need to have good counter-ISR capabilities, and I'm always someone who believes in combat, and also in navies and ships, you need redundant systems. You need backups you need different forms of systems. And so I think it's a critical thing that we need.
Admiral, your same question.
I share Secretary Phelan's belief in this. I think multiple systems is good. When we have a single answer, it can be engineered against. So we need to have terrestrial systems, air and surface, as well as space, sir.
General?
Yes, sir. Our investment in that is the MQ-9, a big wing drone, along with other ISR capabilities, but they're vital to us in the Indo-Pacific based on their endurance and their range.
And the MQ-9 is something you would use in the Indo-Pacific from land, which is vitally important to support naval ships and
Yes, sir.
submarines,
Absolutely.
right?
That is the purpose of it.
And it's not just the existing systems, MQ-9, but we need the newer, high-tech systems as well, right?
That is right, sir. We're always looking to improve.
Okay, thank you. And frankly, the Navy, you have been strong on this, and I commend you for it. And I appreciate it. And thank you for so stating on the record. Based on what we're seeing in the Middle East and what we're seeing in Ukraine, Russia, we've got to do more on drone and counter-drone. And not only here in terms of having the best technologies that, exceed any adversary, but also cost and numbers. Talk to me about what you're doing and what we need to do to help you make sure that we're in that position. Starting with you, Secretary.
So I'll let the Admiral give you specifics on ways we have started to lower the cost per shot or the way to take out drones, because we've definitely pivoted from using some of our more exquisite platforms. At the end of the day, look, we have to protect the ships, because if they hit the ship, that'd be a lot more expensive problem. But this is an area we are very focused on and one we are looking at for counter drones. But I would let the Admiral kind of walk you through a little bit some of the things we've been doing to lower it.
Yeah, in fact, I was on the USS Cole in the Mediterranean after they had returned, and they'd fired off all their missiles, very expensive, as well as using their cannon on the front deck and their 50 cal. And all of those become less desirable because as the UAS is getting closer to your ship as you kind of work down the chain of what's more economical, right?
Hey, so, sir, really quickly, agree with you completely. We can't use our most expensive munitions, which are really capable offensively in defense. But we found ourselves in that position when the Red Sea started. As things developed, we started to use air wings and the ability to attrite the threat range to even include helicopters. What we've done recently is Forbes Strike Group, who is just on the precipice of deploying, has a number of systems that we installed on their combatants that are not integrated in the combat system, but they're knockoffs from the Army, which is a Coyote system, or Hellfire and Longbow, which are missile systems that should get us that range without having to use SM-2s and SM-6s. So that's our start in that, but we are very focused on terminal defense and being able to have those sailors have confidence in those systems to not have to use those more expensive preferred munitions.
And proximity to your ships is huge. It puts you at risk, and an adversary is going to flood the zone and make you fire off all your missiles,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So this is something you have to have today.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And do you feel that you are on top of this today?
I-
Just like
I-
for our bases, we're not on top of counter-drone. They're flying these things all over our bases. This is ridiculous. It puts us in jeopardy. But we need to be on that now, guys. So do you feel like, do you have a certain comfort level? You got it?
I don't say we have it because it is a vexing threat. I think we're taking steps as we've seen with the Forbes Strike Group, and we'll continue to take those steps to get on the right side of the cost curve.
Secretary or General, anything you want to add on that?
I would say the base issue and even our shipyard issues after seeing what Ukraine did to the Russians is something we are very focused on, and it's going to take a cross-government issue because, unfortunately today, if a drone is flying over Groton Shipyard, there is nothing we can do about it, and that needs to change.
Right. General, anything you wanted to add?
No, sir, we're working at all levels. We're working organic counter UAS. We're working installations counter UAS. We're working some of our bigger systems, our LMATIS, our lightweight marine air defense integrated system, our medium range intercept capability, but our counter UAS for installations is woefully behind. And we have to get
Final
after
point is, we're talking so much about the B-2s and rightly so, but what you did with your submarine was absolutely incredible as well. You guys are absolutely amazing what you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Hoven. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. You're not going to be surprised. I want to talk about the Arctic. That should be right on the top of your list of issues here, beginning with A, Alaska is America's Arctic, and of course, when it comes to great power competition in the high north, we not only think about the assets in the air, on the ground, but certainly along our coasts, protecting our sea lanes, asserting our sovereignty, and so the need for a strong Navy is clearly there. So, Secretary Phelan, you've been in this position now for, I don't know if it's been a full 100 days, but probably close on there. So, if you can share with me and those on the committee really where you see or how you see the future of the U.S. Navy's role in the Arctic, and then more specifically to that, what kind of resources you plan to put towards national defense in the high north, and then how, as a committee, how do we measure that success?
Thank you, Senator, and this is a topic important to you, and appreciated the time we spent in your office. We are looking, obviously, Alaska is a important strategic part of our defense, and so we are looking at a number of different things across Alaska that will help increase efficacy and deterrence for us. I can let Admiral Kilby comment on some of the specifics we've been considering, but I look forward to getting back to you as we develop that out and have a clearer picture of what we're doing. But it is a important one. We do use it for training as well as bases for refueling and flight ops, et cetera. So there's a number of different things we currently do and we'll look to expand as well because that area is definitely getting more contested as we've seen.
Well, and as you acknowledge, our adversaries already view this as an area of competition. And so I don't want us to be in a situation or a place where the Navy is still viewing the Arctic as future operating environment. We can't be looking at a piece of paper and saying, okay, we're going to sketch this out beginning in 2030, 2035. It is now, it is happening, it is real. And we are seeing certainly other branches of the government that are keenly focusing on the Arctic, and it seems that the one lag here has been Navy in terms of that engagement. I'm going to turn to you, General Smith, with regards to Marine Corps presence in Alaska. What do you see as an increased role for the Marine Corps in Alaska and in the Arctic? I have had opportunities to be in Norway, other parts of the Arctic, in outside of the United States, where I'm proud to see our Marines, other forces training in an Arctic environment. But I also know that just as we can train in Norway, we have an equal opportunity to do so in Alaska in a pretty tough Arctic environment. If you can survive in that environment, you can make it. You can make it anywhere. So, if you can share with me what you think the role of the Marine Corps in the Arctic is.
Yes, ma'am. There's a saying: the cold makes cowards of us all.
Yes, it does. It's very humbling.
And Alaska offers some of the most brutal training, brutally cold training that can be had. Primarily for the Marine Corps, it's the airspace. Our F-35Bs and Cs can only maximize their full potential in the Alaskan airspace because of its vastness. Because as soon as you turn on certain systems, they're immediately picked up by satellites, they're immediately picked up by Russians and Chinese. So the airspace that's in Alaska is what I'm primarily interested in. And our F-35 pilots love going to Alaska. My assistant commandant, General Christopher Mahoney, F-35 pilot, says there's nothing better than training in Alaskan airspace.
I would agree. I'm going to switch gears just for 1 second here, and I really am down to 1 second. But Secretary Phelan, you were in Guam last month or so, and you said you were appalled and actually very upset after seeing the barracks conditions at Andersen Air Force Base where our sailors were living. I've been out there. I've seen some pretty tough conditions myself. What were the results of the recent barracks inspections? What action is the Navy taking to fix and allocate resources towards barracks in poor conditions, not only in Guam, but I mean, this is a big deal, as I'm sure you know.
Yes, it is, Senator. Thank you for the question. So the Marines and the sailors who were staying in those barracks have been moved out to brand-new barracks at Camp Laz, so they're out there. And I can let the Admiral tell you about the actions we've taken so far.
Hey, ma'am, thanks for the question. We did a room-by-room search for every barracks room in the United States Navy. And we found, unfortunately, about 3% that were unsat. So we've taken those sailors and are moving them out and refurbishing those barracks. It's not, it's a tough problem for us. When I was in Hawaii, I found a Arizona Hall, which probably 20 years ago was okay, but because temperature has risen, not having air conditioning is not satisfactory for our sailors. So we moved all the sailors out of that barracks and are now trying to decide, should we put in, room units or some kind of system to make it habitable again. So we're committed to the Secretary for quality of life to get after this for all the reasons we described, because we need to treat our sailors like they are, world class. And if we treat them that way, then they'll be encouraged to stay in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we've heard a lot of discussion about the amazing development of drones and what they can do. In the Black Sea, for example, without much of a navy of its own, the Ukraine use of drones has produced some pretty good results. Neutralized Russia's Black Sea fleet with cheap drones. On land, more than 2/3 of the casualties since Russia's escalation have come from drones. In the Red Sea, Houthi rebels managed to bring international shipping to a near standstill and repeatedly target U.S. Navy vessels using a mix of cheap Iranian drones and missiles. Clearly, those conflicts offer valuable lessons for the Navy and Marine Corps on the future of warfare, particularly when it comes to both fielding and countering drones. What are the lessons? You've covered some of this, but I'd like to hear it one more time. What are the lessons you've learned? What are the investments you're making? What are you doing to drive down costs of producing and countering drones in the air and at sea?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Look, we are all learning lessons in real time. I'd say the one thing I would say to you as it comes to drones, and I kind of touched on it a little bit in my opening statement, how we fund our drone development is going to be very important. And I think programmatically funding it is going to be tricky because the technology is changing so quickly that if we get stuck on one program, we could end up being obsolete very quickly. We are testing a number of different drone systems undersea, on the surface, in the air. Both forces are doing a lot of incredibly good work. And how that fits in with the whole force design is something we're spending a lot of time. We have to think about defense, offense, and surveillance. All are things we are doing as we speak. They are cost effective. They're very effective. And so we will continue to stay very focused on that. And I promise you, we are taking learning lessons from all of the conflicts in real time and incorporating that into how we look at things. I don't know, General Smith or Admiral Kilby.
I'll just go really quick. I agree with what the Secretary said. We're sharing information from the Naval European Forces Commander, Admiral Munch, with Admiral Kaler in the Pacific. One of our areas is called non-traditional sea denial, which is a combination of unmanned air, surface, and undersea vessels. So we are making an investment in this, and I agree with the Secretary that we have to treat it differently than our traditional platforms. But I believe it will be a mix of unmanned and manned aircraft in what we call a hybrid fleet that'll be most effective for the United States Navy.
And Senator, we have an attack drone team at Quantico that constantly is looking to do additive manufacturing and 3D printing of our own drones. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to be committed to one vendor and then have something better pop up, and now I'm committed to a 5-year contract with one vendor. I want to be able to self-produce drones and attack munitions, one-way attack drones. We can already do that. We've demonstrated that at Quantico, and with great effect and with great efficiency and with great economic sense.
Well, if there are no further questions, senators have 1 week to submit additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We request your responses be received within 30 days of receiving the questions. The subcommittee stands in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
Thank you.